Now, John Cassian, the next person we want to discuss in early Christianity, would have been about 21 years old during the time when paganism began to be suppressed, and about 31 years old when it was completely outlawed. He lived from 360 to 435 AD, I believe. He was a monk who followed the teachings of Origen. After he learned from some hermits in Bethlehem and then in Egypt, he ended up in Rome. Now, don't let the fact that he went to Jerusalem or Bethlehem, or Israel, whatever, to deceive you, okay? Because he had a mixture of paganism in his belief system. Anyway, he also lived at the same time as Augustine and St. John Chrysostom. In John Cassian's book Conferences, he promoted the teachings of Egyptian desert monks. Alexandria, by the way, is in Egypt. Now, John Cassian wrote down the Alexandrian Neoplatonist teachings and he passed them on to Rome. Now, when I say Alexandrian Neoplatonist teachings, that's what the Egyptian monks promoted, but they basically were promoting a form of Hinduism, Buddhism, and Egyptian meditation all blended together. So he promotes these writings in his book Conferences. They're written in Latin and Greek and adopted by Eastern Orthodox Christians as well as by Christians in the West. The pagan contemplative practices continue to be promoted through the centuries by Isidore, Bishop of Seville, 601 to 636 AD, Francis of Assisi, and Clare of the Poor Clares in 1181 to 1226 AD. Clare, the Poor Clares was the female division of the Franciscan order. Thomas Aquinas appears to have accepted them as well, as he quotes Athanasius in saying that Christ came to make us into gods. Ignatius of Loyola, 1491 to 1556, also inherited these beliefs and practices, and including the visualization of Egyptian mystery schools, and passed them on to Theresa of Avila, who in turn passed those on to John of the Cross. It should be clear by this point that when we look closely at the teachings of some of the earliest Christians, we find that they were corrupted by paganism. These teachings that the apostles called damnable heresies and the doctrines or teachings of devils. In order to really understand what's being promoted to us by these Christians, it's necessary to go a bit more deeply in depth regarding the teachings and practices of the spiritual disciplines. So I'm going to go ahead and examine these more in depth, and we'll begin to see how they led to supernatural manifestations. We've already begun to see that the spiritual disciplines in ancient Christianity were handed down to us from pagan sources. The pagan disciplines were handed down for thousands of years and were used for the purpose of becoming joined to the divine mind, or the nous, and contacting gods, goddesses, angels, and other beings for the purpose of receiving benefits and supernatural powers. This union or joining with the main deity was achieved through controlling the passions of the body, first practicing virtues, then or good works, then controlling the passions of the body, and then entering into a contemplative state. This was said to lead to perfection, immortality, and deification. You became God. When these teachings were introduced to the church, they were adopted in such a way as to make them sound Christian and to appear to be backed up by the scriptures. For those of you who may not have seen the first videos, the pagans used many different words to refer to the main deity that they sought to join with. It's said to be an unconscious entity or non-personal energy that they believe manifests all other gods, goddesses, angels, and all of creation, including Jesus Christ, the Logos, and the quote-unquote Holy Spirit. These are considered to be other gods, firstborn powers, and creations of that first energy of the universe. This universal energy or consciousness is their main god, their main pagan deity. In the process of gaining unity with this unconscious God, they ascend through different levels in contemplation. At one point, their contemplation leads them to the divine or universal consciousness, which in paganism is called the nous or the demiurge. This is a sort of a divine mind or consciousness that's supposed to be a reflection of the one source, or the all, or the absolute, is joined to it but is distinct from it. In either case, the consciousness is also considered to be God in a sense because it's an emanation of God. Other names for the energy: the source, the all, the good, the beautiful, the truth, the divine mind, divine consciousness, universal consciousness, and today even Christ consciousness. And I'm sure this is not an all-inclusive list, but I want you to be aware that these names are used to refer to this same pagan deity. This energy or consciousness is what Clement was referring to when he said that all humans were endowed with a divine, or with a shared mind. Okay? The reason that they believe that we all have one mind is because they think we're all manifestations of one being, the unconscious source or energy that is behind the universe. Our individual existence is an illusion in a sense. And then so this energy or consciousness manifests as the universe and all of creation within it. In other words, we're part of this divine universal consciousness, therefore all creatures share the same consciousness. They believe that by entering within themselves, they come into the awareness of their true self and access this inner self, who is God. Okay, I think I'm not quite at 10 minutes, but I can tell this is going to go a little bit long, so I'm going to go ahead and close this out, and we're going to go into the next part of the series, which I believe is part 5. I'll put that on the screen when I figure that out, and I hope you join me in the next segment.